Hey Ty, how's it going?
Great. How you doing, Alex?
Great to have you here. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I appreciate it.
yeah. So earlier this January, you released Alien Beans. How has the recording for it and everything been with it so far?
Um, it's been well so far. The first week, I can't even remember now what all the chart positions were, but I was pleasantly surprised at at the positions that it came out on. So I guess it did okay.
Yeah, definitely. Now, one thing I was always curious about is between your solo stuff and with King's X, being that this is your solo work and you're not working with Doug and the other guys, does your solo work maybe allow you to kind of have a little more creative independence? Not to discredit your role with King's X, but does that maybe allow you to kind of have more of your own vision in it?
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, just because it forces me to be locked in and forced to only have my vision in it, because I'm literally in there alone, doing it all, the engineering, mixing, and everything. So it's just 100% what I can do. It's not necessarily a thing that I do like that because I believe it's the best way to do it. It's just my situation. It's the situation I am afforded right now. I moved up to Kansas City a few years back and don't really know many musicians here. Not any that really do the type of music that I do. It's more of a folk kind of area, and I'm sort of just in a situation where I have to do everything myself. So yeah, as far as the question goes, I guess it's a matter of forced to be that way. I would prefer having some input and some help, some good trusted help.
Yeah.
I got a good friend down in Texas. If he lived here, he would be recording with me all the time, but that's the problem.
Yeah, I guess, some people think they do the solo project and that it might be easier to record, but I guess it's sometimes easier to have input from the outside, right?
It is. I mean, it's a lot easier. Anytime you shoulder it all yourself, it's more pressure, more work, in my opinion. I mean, maybe other people thrive on it differently. I guess each person's different. So maybe for someone else, it might be a different experience. For me, it's always a lot more pressure, and I love it when some of the load of the overall picture gets taken up by somebody else. But you have to find people you trust
Of course.
to be in those positions, and that's a really tough thing to do.
Yeah, trusting yourself is sometimes the hardest thing to do when there's like no input, somebody like kind of over your shoulder, like guiding you, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Kidding.
Now,
It's always easier to see what's wrong with something as in the second person,
absolutely.
And so you need those people around you. That's for sure.
Absolutely. Now, with everything you've done, whether it would be your solo stuff or working with King's X or your other side projects like Platypus or the Jelly Jam, do you kind of have like a blanket songwriting process and stuff, or does each project you do, is it a completely different process?
I think that over time, the process has changed for King's X, but the way that we do it with Jelly Jam is we just bring in loads and loads of fragmented ideas, and in my case, I normally bring in a few completed songs because I just tend to write that way.
Yeah.
But in general, we'll pick out things that we like from a whole bunch of fragmented, unfinished ideas, and then work together as a band to try to see those ideas, come together as something that makes sense.
Of course.
And that's the way we do it with Jelly Jam,
Okay.
and that's become our norm.
Okay.
With King's X, we we do it different ways. You know, sometimes I'll bring a song in that's just complete, and we learn it and play it, and just that simple. Other times, it's an idea that is not totally complete, but has the majority of a song. It just needs some special sauce on it, you know, a little bit of extra something to complete the picture. And in cases like that, we'll all knock heads and work together on it. But the way that we have written most things in the last few recordings have been, well, for instance, like the Mr. Bulbous album, the Manic Moonlight album, and probably a good chunk of the Tapehead album. We just kind of came into the studio and just started writing with no idea what we were going to come up with. And we intentionally didn't like bring in ideas and stuff. We just came in and started making stuff up together. And so we've done a lot of that lately, or in the last few times we've recorded. I remember, like, when we worked with Michael Wagner, we went back to bring in a few songs in, you know, but they were incomplete for the most part, and we had to work on things together as a band to complete things in that scenario. But when we got finished, Michael looked at us and said, you know, we need something that with a little more energy to put on this record too. And so literally within 2 hours or so, we had written the song Go Tell Somebody and recorded the basic tracks. It was that quick. Just coming up with from nothing, you know.
It's so crazy to think like that.
Say what? I'm sorry.
It's crazy that like songs that are done so well can just sometimes be done that organically, that quickly.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes together, it just comes together. You know?
Yeah. So a lot of the stuff that you've done, it's happened organically. You would say it doesn't you don't like come into the studio with a preconceived idea and just write that. You kind of just like jam and see where it takes you.
Well, I know that we do that a lot. But in the past, we've also done a lot of bringing ideas in and working them out very methodically. And I like doing either one, to be honest. I think that we end up with some of our best songs when we work methodically on them and don't let anything go. It also is not as fun to work that way, but you can end up with better results sometimes.
Of course.
But you just kind of play each thing by ear, because if you're pushing something further than it needs to be pushed so that, you know, somebody's just being uninspired by it, then it's defeating the purpose also. So we just kind of play things by ear.
Okay. Yeah, I guess if you kind of come in with a certain expectation and doing something, that could sometimes lead to disappointing results, right? Yeah. Now, what I've noticed is you're a very prolific artist. You have a lot of stuff from all the stuff you've done with King's X and your solo stuff and all your side projects. So I know it's like not exactly very easy to record a record, but because you've recorded so much, does it get a little bit easier each time you enter the studio?
Parts of it get easier. Some of the technical aspects are easier just because I'm getting faster at being able to achieve what I'm trying to get to, just because of working in the same space for so long now. And I love the particular software environment I use and everything. And so the more I've gotten comfortable with that, the faster the technical aspect of things goes. And that can help on the creative side, because the technical side is the creative killer. So if things are taking too long to fix this or that before you can get back to recording a part, it can be have a totally negative effect. So being faster technically helps with that problem, and helps alleviate some of those creative walls that are hit because of the technical problem.
Yeah.
So that side of things is definitely easy. As far as the performing parts, writing lyrics, trying to sing, stuff like that, I think some of that maybe is getting harder for me. I never have enjoyed singing. I've only done it because if I want there to be lyrics and a vocal melody on my song, I have to sing it. So, I mean, I just sort of do that out of necessity also. But I've never really enjoyed singing. I love guitar playing. I can play guitar in the studio day and night forever and just be in nirvana. When it comes to doing vocals, it's when it becomes not fun at all for me. Okay. And I just have to suffer through that. So that part of recording has never gotten any better.
Okay. I mean, to each his own. It's like, because it's funny, like, I'd imagine, like, the songwriting process does get hard with the more you do, because you kind of look back at your previous discography and you're like, oh, what didn't I do yet, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I've actually found myself writing something the other day, and after I had spent, I don't know, maybe a week tweaking it out and working on it and everything, and sitting back and thinking, wow, I really like that, I realized it was the progression from another song.
Oh, really?
But very, very luckily for me, it's a song that had never been released yet, so I can use the new version.
So we've been hearing the newer version without hearing the older version.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what I loved about everything you've done, whether it would be King's X or your solo stuff, is that your music sounds very experimental. It has very hard parts. It has, classic rock elements, some progressive elements I see in there. So has experimenting always been easy to do and, like, kind of been easier to try new things? Like, or have you always stuck with a formula?
No, I love experimenting. I think that the Beatles are probably my just ultimate inspiration about recording albums. And they were the supreme, people for doing experiments in the studio. So many things they did were things that were done for the first time ever. I mean, I could just start listing and keep going. From early albums to the end, they were always innovating, always trying new things, always experimenting. And so, to me, I've always felt that is a must to get to crazy things you never could have planned. That's how you find the happy accidents, like Bob Ross used to say.
Exactly.
So experimenting is the life of it to me. That's the fun part. That's where you find the magic. Because it's in the middle of experiments, you hear something for the first time you didn't plan and go, ooh, I need to develop in that direction. And it's the experiment, it's the accident that got you there. So it's to me, it's extremely vital for everything I do.
Yeah. Sometimes the greatest things were discovered by accident, right?
Usually the greatest things are discovered by accident. Usually, I would say.
Of course. Now, you have been rocking the world for a very long time. I believe King's X started in 79 or something like that. And, I've heard a lot of modern day rock bands and metal bands say they've taken inspiration from you and King's X and everything you've done. Have newer bands ever inspired you in a way?
Oh, there are bands out there that inspire me a lot. For the last 10 years or so, I've been a very big fan of Death Cab for Cutie.
Oh, they're great.
And they're just, to me, one of the greatest bands I've ever heard. And I've now seen them a few times. Ben Gibbard, to me, is one of the best songwriters of our time. And so I'm a huge fan of those guys. I really loved the original band a whole lot, with Chris Walla. And I'm going to miss him not being in the band anymore. But the new version, even though it's different, it's good still. It's a cool thing. I can't wait to see what they do on the next album. But it's been a little while. But I look forward to everything they do.
Of course.
And for a while, I was on a pretty big trip with Billy Talent for a few years.
Oh, Billy Talent?
Yeah.
Oh, they're so good. Great show to see live.
Yeah, they're excellent live, no doubt.
Yeah. Now, you've toured with a variety of bands, I've noticed too. I saw you guys at NAMM in 2017 at the Schecter party with Zach Wilde and King, and
Yeah.
and I saw you with a couple of progressive bands. So would you say that because you've played with a variety of different bands, you've kind of played to multiple different types of audience? You don't like kind of have just one audience that you play in front of?
Oh yeah, I mean, if we're out with other bands, it's always a different audience than what we would find at one of our own shows. For instance, to give you an idea of just how radical the audience difference can be, we came off the road one time with Pearl Jam, and I'm sure you're familiar with the type of audiences they were drawing back in the 90s.
Of course.
Well, we came right off the road from that to doing an arena tour with the Scorpions.
Oh.
And so it was literally not one human being in that entire place would have been found at a Pearl Jam show, as far as I would imagine. So it's radical different audiences from band to band to band when you're doing the opening, for sure.
Of course. And I gotta imagine that makes it more interesting too, right? Because I'd imagine you're always wondering what type of crowd you're going to play in front of.
Yeah, and you always you get surprised by which crowds like you and which ones don't. For instance, you would think King's X would probably get a better crowd response with a Scorpions crowd than a Pearl Jam crowd, but just the opposite. The Pearl Jam crowd was fantastic for us.
Really?
They were awesome. Yeah, it was incredible.
And Scorpions, I guess maybe was too many diehard metalheads, or.
Well, they were cool, but they were kind of just waiting for us to be done. You know? And the Pearl Jam audience actually, got into it,
which is great.
Cool.
Yeah. So before we go, I want to first of all thank you so much for your time, and giving me the phone call today. Can we be expecting?
Sure,
thank you. Can we be expecting any tours for Alien Bean or anything new with King's X or any other side projects coming up?
Well, King's X is going to be getting busy starting in April, going back out touring and playing all year. But in the time off, we're coming up with music, writing stuff, just to with the idea that at the end of the year we may go back in the studio and do some of the first recording we've done in about 2 years.
Really?
Yeah.
That's got to be like a fresh start too, not just kind of like picking up where you left off with the last record.
Well, it'll be interesting because it's been so long. We're not in any kind of groove of any kind for recording now. It'll be interesting.
Yeah.
We never know what's going to happen when we get in the studio, but it'll be fun. We'll find out. We figure that it would really be almost silly not to do another album at this point because things have been going so well for us live lately. So we figured we better do another album while we're still able to.
Yeah, definitely. We would love to have you return to New York City. That Stage 48 show that you guys played back in 2016 it's still planted in my brain firmly. It was that amazing.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. But
cool. Thanks, man.
Thank you so much, Ty, and best of luck with everything.
I appreciate it. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, anytime. Take care.
All right, man. See you.